This week on the Rental Report Review, Blue Collar, Diva, Odd Man Out, Final Episode, Peggy Sue Got Married.
From the author of Taxi Driver comes Blue Collar.
I have a confession to make right up front. I originally put this movie on around midnight thinking maybe I'd watch about 30 minutes of it, but very quickly, almost instantly, found myself completely gripped and watched this movie staying up way past my bedtime, me pretending as if I actually have a bedtime. I knew nothing about this film coming into it. I only knew that it was a Paul Schrader film and that, like the title says, takes place in a working class strata. The movie very quickly pulled me in with these character portraits of our three main protagonists. Yaphet Kotto, oh my god, he's so good, always. And what seems like it might be a story about Richard Pryor's character attempting to ascend through the ranks of their union in an attempt to bring justice, but in a Paul Schrader way is probably taken out at some point. Rather abruptly, makes a 90-degree turn into a heist caper, and somehow manages to bring everything that I thought the film was set up for into this heist film. It kept me on my toes the entire time. I give Paul Schrader's Blue Collar 4 stars.
The thing I don't understand is why you let the union rip you off as much as management, you know?
Do my job. Can't nobody say no different.
If you'll excuse the cheap metaphor, he, the cast, the crew, everybody's firing on all cylinders. I feel Schrader ultimately pulls it all together. It's kind of a question of emphasis. What he and his generation, the Coppolas, the Spielbergs, Lucas, De Palma, did so well is that they took these classical Hollywood archetypal narratives and archetypical characters and placed them into the real world of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And many of the underlying themes had to do with disillusionment, often with a world that was maybe once great, promised something great, didn't fulfill, is dreaming, is being suppressed by their parents' generation. Blue Collar slots right into that sort of meta-analysis. High story, put in modern blue-collar America with modern blue-collar characters that are archetypes, carrying out a specific subgenre, and reaching back into classical mythology in terms of tragedy, comedy, catharsis.
The American dream. If you're rich, you can buy it. If you're anything else, you gotta fight for it.
It's a great Paul Schrader movie I don't think I've heard anybody mention. It's a great Harvey Keitel movie. Keitel is maybe slightly neglected, though. It's a great Yaphet Kotto movie. It's a great Richard Pryor movie. Look, here's the thing. I love and hate and love French cinema. I mean, the French arguably single-handedly created cinema, defined it and redefined it multiple times, and completely deconstructed it. There can be a certain air of holier than thou in their films toward their audiences. I think the point at which I start to reach maximum eye roll is when a film, French or otherwise, engages in this whole, look what we're doing here, isn't it cute, what we're doing here, wink wink, none of this means anything, but we're going to continue this shadow play of a film, calling back to previous films, and use conventions and non-conventions when it suits us. Some films are able to use this to great effect and actually make a point, while many others refuse to engage in any other activity than putting something together they don't expect anyone to watch. I don't know. All of that to say that I think Diva is the former rather than the latter. Here, Beineix unites the deconstruction of the genre with its central themes around classical forms, around performance and reproduction, around the machinery of empire, and to just style the shit out of them. I know very little to nothing about cinema du Luc. I've seen a fair amount of Luc Besson films, but I know very little of Carax, much less Beineix. But I give Diva 3.5 stars. It is very high on coolness and vibes. It delivers on its core thriller, spends a fair amount of careful time with the so-called fringes of so-called post-colonial France in the 1980s. But possibly the other thing I'm reacting to is I feel like there's an awful lot of hype around the stylization of these films in a post-Tony Scott world. Felt pretty tame. I look forward to watching Betty Blue and coming back to this one. I think this is only my second Carol Reed film. I saw The Third Man maybe, tail into high school, early in college. I don't know if I was just too young, but I found myself a little underwhelmed by The Third Man. Maybe because I was such an Orson Welles fan, more so Touch of Evil, although I love Citizen Kane, that I heard a lot of the hype going into Third Man, and by the time I saw it, I don't know, maybe I was reacting a little bit too much to the hype. Don't get me wrong, I like the movie. Odd Man Out, however, I love this movie. I mean, first and foremost, it is fucking gorgeous. Reed and Krasker, Brinton with their art direction, are way ahead of the curve in bridging the gap between set and location photography. This feels like a real city. It feels like it's being shot for real at night on location. And that verisimilitude grounds this film, grounds these characters. James Mason, some of the best I've ever seen him. Great action directing. It's a great chase film.
Do you mean to say the three of you come back here without Johnny?
I'm members.
Without your
I give Odd Man Out 4 stars. I also found myself thinking a lot about The Cranes Are Flying, both in terms of the longing of that film and the cinematic expressionism that's both very real and very emotionally heightened as well.
But it's Johnny.
Yes, it's him, all right.
What do you want me to do with him?
Get rid of him. Tip him out somewhere in the dark, away from here.
I'll definitely watch this again. Can't wait to check out The Fallen Idol. And then I definitely want to go back to The Third Man. I was a little worried coming into this one. This is the 5th and final installment of the Yakuza Papers, the Battles Without Honor and Humanity series, final episode. And I have to say, Fukasaku definitely stuck the landing. A lot of what causes a Yakuza narrative to spin out is a perception of escalation of violence and the dishonor that may be perceived either by the attack, the lack of a response to an attack, essentially the wounding of masculinity. What honor is actually worth pursuing and fighting for? What should one have pride in? Or are these emotions and drives inherently flawed? He depicts Yakuza life as largely brutal, short, duplicitous, not glamorous, not romantic, not desirable. And the few that seem to have gained any wisdom seem engaged in a Sisyphusian trial. I give Battles Without Honor and Humanity final episode 4 stars. I think it's an amazing experiment with using documentary techniques. Many of the scenes are done with one shot, minimal shots, almost as if the documentarian was there capturing this as it's going along. Gives the film this amazing frenetic energy. The pace is so perpetually high. It would be fairly unreasonable to quibble with these 5 films that were made in 2 years for maybe, I don't know, going too hard? These 5 films, taken together, are definitely more than the sum of the parts. and stand in stark juxtaposition. And stand in stark juxtaposition to other Yakuza films of the time, of other mafia films in Japan, outside of Japan, in Europe. Bunto Sugawara is magisterial in his film. Joe Shishido saunters through with his big swinging cheeks. Kobayashi somehow pivoted his cool to gravitas. It's great, truly great.
Peggy Sue was once crazy about the guy she married.
Even as the greatest filmmaker of his generation, Francis Ford Coppola is underrated. Most everybody knows that at some point, Coppola, quote-unquote, went off the rails, that he was washed up. But I don't know, I gotta tell you, going back through these movies in preparation for Megapolis, I see nothing. Yeah, sure, he's clearly taking some movies for hire, but in the case of Gardens of Stone, Cotton Club, The Outsiders, Rumblefish, supposedly films that he's taking to collect a paycheck to pay off the bank, he is showing up in these films, even when he's saying in interviews that he's not showing up. The man can apparently make a movie in his sleep. I was about 6 years old when Peggy Sue first came out, but I didn't catch it. I was definitely Back to the Future kid, which is hilarious to see this movie in that context. I really loved Peggy Sue. I love that it has the whole boomer obsession with time travel and high school movies. The baby boomer middle class is brought into a world that for them is bountiful, but not long into their adulthood, there is one betrayal and tragedy after another. Political assassinations, nuclear crises, the Vietnam War. And by the 80s, we start to see these films, these stories about time travel, about high school. The thing I love most about Coppola's time travel movie, it's much more of a classical Greek interpretation of attempting to escape your fate. I give Peggy Sue Got Married 4.5 stars. It is a beautiful film. Coppola and Jordan Weth together, incredible images. Hyper-realism, magical realism, crossed with no light verite. I think he and Wells understand the mission of cinema, and as an apparatus, maybe more than just about anybody. And he can just make a really solid film, without even trying, apparently. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram and X to see what movies I'm renting next, and pretty much everything is on my letterbox. I am going to go watch some more movies. I hope you do too. Pretty well.